Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. Let's kick off a great show. I know we got a guest we've both known for a long time today.
Yeah. A longtime industry executive, maybe even some would say a legend in the HR tech space. Someone that I've been around probably for a couple of organizations. UltiPro, you're there for a while. Ceridian in my analyst days. And now the founder and CEO of Traction, a new AI-based workforce management solution. So welcome, Jensen, to the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And it is, I was at HR Tech back in September, and everybody was asking me, why I've stuck around as long as I have. And it's because it's, not to sound corny, but it's like, it's family. Like I go to that, it's like a family reunion, right? And even some of the people you don't want to see are there.
That's right.
But
the estranged nephews and uncles, right?
Right.
That you
I
wish.
know. I know. No, it's a small pond, right? It's such a small pond, but yeah.
It
but
is.
it's a great pond.
It is.
It
So
is,
Julie,
and you kind of preempted a little bit, but let's where did you get your start in HR? How the heck did you get into this? I know you've mentioned you stick around because it's like one big happy family, but
Yeah. Well, it's like my good friend Dan Jeckering always said, he goes, nobody chooses payroll, it chooses you. And, I was working for JP Morgan Bank up on Wall Street, and I spoke at a Microsoft conference, and this guy, Alan Goldstein, who was one of the original founders of Ultimate Software, heard me, and he started calling me out of the blue. And I thought, man, I'm working for JP Morgan Bank. You're this like payroll startup. I'm thinking quick pay, right? In this payroll startup down in South Florida. But then over the course of a year and a half, I met Scott and we just kind of hit it off. And I thought, man, this thing really could be something. And our model was PeopleSoft, what Dave Duffield had done with PeopleSoft. We thought we could do at Ultimate. So I was employee, 29, something like that at Ultimate. I originally came on as to head development as the CTO, then the CIO, then the CAO. And, nobody goes to college and go, man, I want to do payroll. And, so fortunately I played basketball in university, and obviously I wasn't good enough to go pro. So the next step is payroll, right?
yeah, sure. If not pro, be payroll. It's a great reminder to all of our leaders out there as well. Like sometimes you just got to take somebody smart that and just reach out and grab them and pluck them back into our world. Because when somebody who's got their act together, like payroll is probably going to be a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
And something you said when you were talking with Bonnie the other day is, I don't know if you ever read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, but it talks about the two different mindsets that most people are. You're either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset is somebody who their whole life they've been told, oh, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. So they never want to veer off of that path of what they're good at because they don't want to risk not being thought of smart. And then there's those that have a growth mindset that are like, I don't know anything about that, but I'll take a stab at it, give it to me, and I'll run with it. Call that, foolish exuberance or whatever. But that's kind of how I cut my career is like, I'll try anything,
Same.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah. I'll try.
Yeah.
Why not?
I was always the one. Yeah. Anyway, no, it's good. It's good. I think I tell my kids this. I'm like, you got to try. You got to just try it out. And you don't know till you've been exposed to it, and you'd be shocked at what you're into,
Yeah. You might, I used to do a lot of public speaking in my days at Ultimate. And one of the things I would ask everybody in the room, mostly it was HR people, payroll people. And one time it was a group of lawyers, and that didn't work as well. But I said, how many people went to school for what they're currently doing? And it's invariably, it was less than 20% of the room raised their hand, because somehow during your career, somebody saw something in you, or you found something that was interesting, and you ended up going that route. And it's like Steve Jobs in that commencement address that he did, where he was talked about looking back and connecting the dots of how you ended up where you are. And you don't see it until the hindsight,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's so true. Like, why do we keep asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? No, give them some stuff to do and then say, did you like it? Did you hate it? What didn't, and give them something else to do, right?
So sweet justice. My wife and I are a blended family. And so I was a single dad of 4. She was single mom of 3. we joined forces 20 years ago. It was a lot easier with two than me with one. But all of my kids were like, "Oh, I don't want to do what dad does. I don't want to do computers." I'm like, "What does that even mean? If you work at a gym, you use a computer, right?
Yeah.
So what does
Yeah.
that even mean?" Now, between my kids and their spouses, 7 of them are in our industry. I've got 2 at Gallagher, 2 at Paylocity, 1 at Dayforce, 1 at UKG. They're everywhere. I'm keeping HCM in business with employees. So
Nice.
This is
Nice.
going to be the Revenge of the Nerds episode, Jim.
that's
Jim,
right.
I gotta ask you while we're on the subject, man. Ultimate was lightning in a bottle. It really was.
The
It was a
greatest time of my life.
just a remarkable story and organization. What was that like, man? Working in that time. I mean, it was really cool.
I mean, honestly, it was unbelievable. When I first went down there and met Scott, we kind of hit it off. We had similar backgrounds growing up. And when I first got there, I thought, what have I got myself into? My first development team meeting, it looked like the UN. I had a guy from mainland China. I had a full Orthodox Jewish rabbi who was an unbelievable coder, and he sang country music. I called him the Rhinestone Rabbi. Then I've got
Nice.
a guy that's Cuban. I've got another guy from Deep Woods, Alabama, unbelievable coder, but it was like speaking another language there. And I thought, what have I got myself into? I left Wall Street for this,
Yeah.
but it ended up being the greatest ride of my life. And it was, I remember when we first launched UltiPro Web, I had gone off and done a little skunkworks project when the web was new. And I said, hey, I think this is the direction we should be going in. So we started building this thing, and when we're selling it, for 6 months, we were working 120 hours a week. And I would wake up in the morning and on the couch in Scott Shear's office, and he would have like a bagel and a coffee for me. And he always called me tall guy, and he'd go, "Morning, tall guy." And I'm like, oh, I'd go in the bathroom, clean up, and get back at it, converting data and getting the product rolled out. But it was unbelievable. Like, to have been part
Yeah.
of that
Wonder
was
if that's how
phenomenal.
those are called. That's why the name Skunkworks came up.
Oh yeah. Well, we
Maybe.
did everything. I was like, hey, let's try this. Well, that worked. Cool. Let's try this. And when the web was new, we were building client server
Yeah.
technology, thinking that was the way to go. And then we did a huge pivot to the web. And I mean, that was it. And then we had to weather the big, we're old enough to remember the big the dot bomb in the early 2000s, where we were selling license, and we're like, holy cow, this isn't going to work. We were
Oh
losing
no.
4 million a month, and I mean 4 million a quarter. And then we decided to flip the model to SaaS, and we were one of the first ones. SaaS was coined as a term in 2001. We launched it in
Yep.
2002, and it just like took off from there.
I'm pretty
So
sure it was the first one in the cloud, to be honest.
we were,
One of.
I think so.
and it was a hybrid. I mean,
Yeah.
candidly, it was a hybrid. We had this back office thing we had done, and then we had the web front end, and then eventually more and more moved over
Yep.
into it. But hosting it, there was ASP back then and all that, but no real SaaS model where it became a subscription service, which was beautiful because if your OpEx kind of stays the same, but your annual recurring revenue, once it passes that, it's gravy above that, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what turned it around for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, being an analyst, kind of, I kind of came into what would be the sort of the backside of them going off to Kronos and all that. Yeah, just impressive. There's so many impressive things you guys accomplished there. So shout out to that. Now, I got one more thing I want to ask you before we move on. I don't know if you've ever heard this story, Julie, but I want Jim to share it. Hopefully he doesn't mind. Jim, I was going to introduce you as Jim Jensen, but not the dolphin. Can you
Yeah.
tell the story? The first time I met you, you told a great story at dinner about being mistaken for Jim Jensen from the Dolphins in the 80s. And as a sports fan, I love that story, man.
So it happens all the time. When
love
I
it.
was in Miami, and my wife thought, "Oh, I can't believe you, do that." I'm like, "All right, whatever." We go to dinner one night, and the maitre d' gets our name. He goes, "Your name?" I said, "Oh, it's Jim Jensen." And he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And my wife is standing there, so I go to the restroom, and he goes, "That's Jim Jensen?" She said, "Yeah." He goes, "Wow, that." So he played for the Dolphins, and she says, "No, no, no, that's not." And they go, "Right." And so they wouldn't believe her. So we got the best service, but I got my cable installed in a day.
I
I
love it.
was on a flight one time, and the guy wouldn't believe I wasn't him, so he asked me to autograph his boarding pass for him.
Oh
And
my.
So I did, and some kid's got a boarding pass hanging on the wall with my college number on it, signed by Jim Jensen. But
Oh,
this
man.
but this gets even better. So we're in the Bahamas for club one year, and Dan Marino and, Al Leiter and all we were all kinda hanging out by the pool area, and I walked up to Dan and I go, "Hey, Dan, Jim Jensen." I figured he doesn't remember my name. He goes, "No, Dan Marino." I said, "No, I'm Jim Jensen." He goes, "No, he's Jim Jensen." And Jim Jensen was standing right next to him.
Oh, I love
So
it.
so I go, "No, I'm Jim Jensen too." He goes, "Get the hell out of here, Jim. Meet Jim Jensen."
Holy cow. It's like the Spider-Man meme where he's pointing at each other.
Right, exactly. So Jim and I ended up kinda hitting it off,
I love it.
and now, even his wife can't tell which one of us is talking on, like, Facebook or something.
Yeah, yeah. I would have told my wife, "Just go along with it. Whatever they add, just say,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's me. Yeah."
Yeah. I
Get the free
stopped
tickets.
fighting it, just
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. I love it. I
You
love it,
were
man. We're not
appropriating Jim Jensen
celebrity.
Yeah,
before it
but
was
nobody will
cool to
believe you when
appropriate.
you try to tell them you're not, and they're like, "Yeah, right. You're just trying
I
to
know.
be
Sure, you
coy."
would say that if you're Jim Jensen, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not me. I love
Yeah.
it, man. I love it. Well, look,
It's fun.
I want to get into the market, man, because you have been around it, right? You've seen it. And I know you're out there, you're a new founder. Congratulations on
Yeah,
traction.
thank you.
But yeah, man, what's got you excited right now in HR tech? Like, what are you seeing? What's going on, man? What's the pulse from your angle?
Yeah, look, not to sound like one of the, everybody's jumping on, but I mean, if we're honest, machine learning and AI have been around for a while, but it's the implementation of it now. It used to be this kind of black science we did in the back end of systems to do things,
Yeah.
but now it's the end users are using it, which is I use it all the time in what we're doing with traction now. Even just in general, around, if I'm trying to come up with wording for something or I'm trying to do some research on something.
Yeah.
I think the thing about AI though is you have to know what it's talking about, right? You can't I think the rub is when people take it at face value, but they don't understand the context of it, so they just take it and run with it. If you don't understand what it's talking about, it could be wrong. There could be hallucinations in it, and so if you really have an understanding of what it's providing back, you can fact check it and
Yeah.
verify the information without just kind of running with it. And then, the way we're leveraging it in traction, if you will, is I like to call it assistive intelligence.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that we should rely on AI to make decisions where there has to be accountability because you can't hold AI accountable. There has to be a human element that can be held accountable for that decision. So it's assistive. Think of it like a paralegal to a lawyer,
Right.
right?
Yep.
It
Yep.
can surface all this information, it can do the research, it can find all that. It's up to me now to take that, assimilate it, fact check it, verify resources, and then make a decision based on that information. I mean, I remember John Sumser telling me, man, this was I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. If I remember correctly, forgive me if I'm wrong, John, but his wife was a labor attorney, labor lawyer. And
Yes.
he was telling me how they were already seeing lawsuits where people were relying on back then AI making decisions about hiring and stuff that was a conflict, right? And so I think again, you can't remove the human element. I don't believe everybody's going to lose their jobs or anything like that. I think it's just a faster way to collect this information to be able to make an educated decision
Yeah.
about what I'm going to do within my organization, right? It takes that prescriptive analytics or prescriptive thought much farther than what we had with just
Yeah.
what we had just a few years ago. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Such a leap.
What I like about what you said, Jim, is that's really how all of us as leaders should be thinking about AI. Because even if you're allowing AI to come to a conclusion or draw some sort of a recommendation, it is ultimately the person that's instructing AI that's accountable. Like you can't shift that accountability somewhere else. And so as a leader, yes, empower your team to use this stuff, but ultimately there's still a throat to choke somewhere in the
yes,
and the audit of the systems audit will tell you where that throat is, and it's probably yours if you're the
yeah.
leader.
And
Yep.
remember, AI it's like a child. It starts off not knowing anything, and then you teach it. So if you teach it maybe bias or you teach it errant information, it's going to return. I don't know if you remember what a couple of years ago when Google launched their AI, it was returning back bad information. It had, people were the wrong ethnic group, but like
Yeah,
George
yeah.
Washington and stuff, and they lost $85 billion of valuation overnight because
Wow.
it was wrong. So it's come a long way since then. It's going to continue to improve, but I just don't think it's wise to remove the human element out of that.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Especially for HR and payroll. Hey, here's one for you. I don't know if you guys saw this. Utah launched the first in-nation pilot program that allows state-approved artificial intelligence to autonomously renew and certify prescription medications for chronic conditions.
I did not see that.
What are your
Didn't
thoughts
see
on
it.
that? What are your thoughts on that? Might be
Accountability.
obviously the first ever. Yeah.
Yeah, there could be fatal mistakes there, right?
Right. Right.
And so, how do you hold AI accountable for making a fatal mistake? Because the data, the history, the intelligence could all say, for example, my mother, she passed away in 2013. She went into the hospital, said on her chart she was allergic to morphine. They gave her morphine. She crashed. She was in the hospital for a year, slowly recovering, had another incident. They gave her morphine again, and she passed. It was on
Wow.
her chart, and twice it happened. And now we're going to turn something like that, life care, over to that. Now, again, can AI do the research into healthcare and medications? And we're already seeing where it's doing things light years faster than we were able to do it as humans in the research. But then somebody's got to validate that, take
Yeah.
responsibility for that, take accountability for that. So
100%.
yeah,
100%.
My mind went to something similar, and it was just more about just the pain med subscriptions, right? Which now have been overprescribed for so long that there's, people who legitimately have kind of a regular chronic condition have to go through a whole bunch of hoops, because of many who didn't have that or didn't need to have it, but the doctors kind of moved that on. And it just makes me think, well, if it's the routine automation, maybe that's fine. It's just they're doing
mhm,
what the people would do, but could it actually check and find, doctor
Yeah.
shoppers who are getting it from everywhere? There's good and bad ways to deploy all of this, but
Yep.
I think
Yep.
your point is a good one, Jim, and that is there needs to be a throat to choke. And
yeah,
like who signs up for that? Where's the fiduciary in benefits terms, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's the fiduciary of the AI, outcomes,
yeah,
basically?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What's scary about it is they use the word autonomously and they end with without direct human physician involvement in every case. I don't know about that, man.
Yeah.
I'm hoping there's gonna be some involvement, maybe some double check, but yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see. So this is one to watch, I think.
I think there's, to Julie's point, I think if the doctor is using that to assist them in making that decision and determination, maybe they're looking at charts and they miss something or they don't see a pattern, right? The AI sees the pattern, and that's what we're doing with AI in HCM and in workforce management is looking for trends and patterns and things like that. Because I'm not looking at the whole data, right? I'm looking at points in time, and it's really, especially when you have systems that are, fragmented or are, cobbled together, linked together, whatever. It's really hard to aggregate all that data to see the whole picture. And so, AI could absolutely help with culling those massive amounts of data and
yeah.
finding trends and finding anomalies and whatnot, and presenting that up to the end user where they can go, "Oh, wow, yes, that's," because like, let's be honest, in HR, you're all familiar with Visier, right? One
Yeah.
of the things that I liked about Visier was that they have a library of hundreds of questions that you should be asking of your data. If we're honest, most 2,000 man companies, 1,500 man companies, they don't have data scientists. They don't, they're just
Right.
trying to get day to day done, right? They want to be strategic and they want to really make an impact. But a lot of times they don't even know what they could or should be asking of the data because it's too big to try to aggregate all the data, make it make sense to
Yeah.
meaningful, and then call that data for answers or trends or things that are wrong that I
Right.
could use to, because let's be honest, it's at the end of the day, I can have a system collects all the data in the world, but if I can't make sense of that data, if I can't use that data to make
Yeah.
strategic business decisions in my organization. I just have a big, pretty data
Yeah.
store.
I can get a lot more of it quicker.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, Jim, one of the things I want to talk about, and I know some of the drivers, but I'd just be curious to see your point of view. Like, why has workforce management and all of that source to growth, the build to growth, it's the nightmare part of operations for most companies, especially with unions and things. But like, why has all that suddenly become thrust into the like? It's all I feel like we're talking about now. And I love it. But what's happened that's making this such an imperative right now?
So look, as you just said, workforce management is the most complicated part of all human capital management,
Yeah.
followed closely by payroll. And yet, those are the two that tend to get the least respect,
Right.
right?
Right.
They
More
tend to be
money.
commoditized, right? Oh yeah, just whatever. And why is that? Look at the market. There's hundreds and hundreds of HR products
Yeah.
and learning products and assessment products. How many enterprise level serious payroll engines are there? 4, 5 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many serious workforce management solutions are there? A handful, because it's really hard. And
It
why
is.
did they all get scooped up? It's one reason why we launched Traction is there was this parting of the seas, right? Kronos, the 800-pound gorilla, the ADP of workforce management, merges with Ultimate. Now they're a competitor to everybody they partnered with. Dayforce started off as WFM, right? David Ossip, one of the smartest people I've ever met, started off as WFM, and now they have a full product suite. They're trying to sell the whole suite. Then you got Swipe Clock. It gets acquired by Iris. You got Workforce Software, gets acquired by ADP. Who's there to fill the gap that's a 100% independent, unencumbered workforce management only? 80% of payroll errors are traced back to poor time collection
Yep.
and compliance.
Yep.
So you could have the best gross to net engine in the world, but if your zero to gross engine is bad, it doesn't matter because everything downstream is going to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
So
singing my song, Jim.
get right. So, but people want to commoditize it. I thought it was funny. Like when
Yeah.
Workday first launched, they go, "Yeah, payroll, just use ADP. It's no big deal, all right?"
Yeah.
Everybody talks about employee engagement. You want to see employee engagement? Get somebody's timesheet wrong or their paycheck wrong by a nickel. They'll burn the place down. They'll
Oh,
engage
yeah.
with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I talked to one of the big hotels recently. You'd know the name. We all would. And they told me once. They said, "Look, our employees don't want to engage with a piece of technology unless they can pick up a shift and make money. That's it. Period. Point blank." They said we have to communicate to our employees pretty much through that. And if we don't, if it's not that, there's no other discussion about them using it. They're not going to bother with it, right? And so that's interesting. But I think what's crazy, what I also think is happening too, is like I think a lot of the front line is probably where a lot of the AI is not going to replace people, right? Your security guards, your
That's for
waiter,
sure.
there's a lot of jobs that
100%.
The
AI is not going to
trades.
do.
Yeah.
And those
Yep.
people are going to need support and help. And they should be. It shouldn't be so hard to swap a shift and it shouldn't be so hard to take a day off and all this. So yeah, I love that. And I think there's a lot of value in it for the business if they can modernize and use that data effectively.
And I think
Yeah.
that to your point, look, for 35 years, I was promoting single solutions, one platform, one throat to choke and all that. And in the mid-market, 85% of all of the sales at Ultimate and at Dayforce or UKG and Dayforce were full product suite in the mid-market. But when you went up into the enterprise where they had resources, it was always best of breed. They would do Workday or SAP or Oracle for HR. They would do iCIMS for recruiting. They might do Dayforce for pay and time. They're doing Cornerstone for learning because they have the resources to handle the aggregation of the data, making it all work together
Mhm.
and managing those resources. In the middle market, they didn't have that. But with technology the way it is now, it's not reserved just for enterprise anymore. Now, mid-market companies should be able to do the same thing, leverage best of breed solutions, and they should seamlessly connect together through web services and APIs and all that. And I think I liken it to stereo equipment. Back in the day, we used to have all the big stereo equipment. I could have Sherwin Vega speakers, a Yamaha turntable, an Onkyo head, and they all connected together with common interfaces. And they worked as if they were all the same brand of stereo.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
where we should be getting to now. So, I mean, imagine if I could just take my phone, just like I'm talking to Siri, and I could say, "Hey, Traction, I want to pick up an additional shift this week. Are there any shifts available that won't push me into overtime?"
Yeah.
And it tells you and say, put me in for that shift. I want to bid for that shift. Or, hey, I can't work my shift on Friday. Can you put it out to bid for somebody else or see if somebody else can pick it up for me? Right? Things like that are just conversational, right? That agentic AI conversational, that should be really simple. And the frontline worker, which is the majority of the employees in the world, in the country, right? When we built these big monolithic systems, it was all about compensation management, performance management, salary planning and budgeting, and succession planning, and all those things that are big, corporate blue collar type stuff. But when you're talking to Subway sub shops, they might have 200 employees in corporate office and then got 6,000 sandwich artists. And,
Yeah.
and all they care about is tracking their time accurately, making sure we handle compliance issues, California meal breaks, stuff like that. And I want to pay them as inexpensively as I possibly can and
Yeah.
just make it right.
Hey, Jim, your background, in the full suite for
Yeah.
so many years, I feel like makes you a perfect person for me to ask this point of curiosity. How have you seen, and do you think it will change the full suite folks saying, great, I'll take time from point solution, best of breed, whoever it is, XYZ, but do I need to have my module because that's where the data gets stored? Should you be required to have the workforce management module of your full suite in order to be able
Yeah.
to leverage your point solution or not? What has been the history of that and where do you see that going?
Good question. So when you look at UKG right now, they merged with Ultimate 5 years ago. Up until then, Kronos's products were standalone, and every partner they partnered with, it was export punches and import it into the payroll system, validate the punches, and then push it into the batch tables and then calculate payroll, right? So here we are 5 years later after the merger, and that's still the way it works at UKG. The punches get exported, you import them into UltiPro. Now with Ready, it's a little more seamless, I guess, but
Yeah.
with Pro, it's not. It's still handled the same way. So in most cases with WFM at least, it's still this manual process of moving files. Now we're doing it through web services now, which makes it much easier. And we pull all the reference data through web services into Traction, and then we push the punch data back into. You still have to put it in the time clock import tables because you got to validate all the pay codes and earn codes and all that kind of stuff. Here's the other thing I would say is that when you look at every full product suite, they have one or two areas they do really well. That's their meat and potatoes. Everything else is kind of there to check the box on the RFP and to say, here's a full product suite. In some cases, companies have just partnered for those capabilities, and others they may have acquired, and some they built that. At Dayforce, they built that. But as the chief alliances officer at Ultimate and at Dayforce, I partnered with iCIMS because there were deals where our recruitment and onboarding just wasn't going to cut it. So I would bring iCIMS in as the partner for that. Our learning wasn't going to cut it. So we'd bring in Cornerstone or D2L or Brainier or whoever. And there's all kinds of situations like that. I'm talking to full suite vendors right now that have WFM, but they're really frustrated because it's hard. It's really hard. And they underestimate it. Maybe they got a good handle on scheduling, but it's the rest of WFM that's really complicated. And so we're talking to them about partnering with us, and in those deals where theirs is sufficient, great. And where it's not, we can be your partner on that because we don't do HCM. I don't do payroll. I have no intention of doing HCM or payroll. We're just doing WFM, and we're going to be the best of breed and the best at that. And we'll just make sure that we seamlessly integrate with those solutions so that it's transparent.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. When we're going after customers now, they may be on UKG and they're using the full product suite, but they're unhappy with their options for time. Workforce Central's being sunset. So they're being either pushed to Pro or they're being pushed down to Ready, and they're not happy about that. Well, if I'm an SI partner and I do multiple vendors, what are my options? Okay, well, I'm gonna move you from UKG Total over to Dayforce or over to Workday or something. Well, now I can just replace the part that's not working well, in this case, WFM, and they stay on the rest of UKG or the rest of Workday or the rest of
Yeah.
Paylocity or whatever they're using.
The modularity is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just even dealing with the different options, right, is as complex as the
Yes.
time itself. And
Yeah.
the caution that I always see is, is no employer wants to pay twice. Once because the suite needs a place, a repository to grab the information and put it, and once for the functionality that they're
Yep.
looking for. And that is absolutely a watch out, right?
Yeah.
When you're putting best things in place and making them
Yeah.
work together.
And when you look at UKG, like they called it Hub, and now they've called it something else. I can't remember what they call it now, but it was the Hub, and the whole premise of that was because UKG is a combination of products that have been loosely coupled or integrated interface, so they have to aggregate all that data together so they can do meaningful reporting off of that. We would be better integrated to UKG gross to net than their own time product is. So it's the same model. They just have to aggregate the data from the punch data over into that hub in a very similar way. So
Jim, just to kind of pivot away from that, I want to talk about a little bit about kind of AI again around the front line, right? I mean, around one of the things I do love is, for so long in many companies, the people who get promoted to management are often the people who've done the thing that the
Yep.
company does for the longest.
Yep.
They didn't necessarily have leadership experience, but they got promoted. And that's scary as hell when you're a new leader and you're not getting a lot of training. But I love that there's a lot of stuff coming online to help augment the frontline manager. We talked about the Dayforce coach, I think it was, where you can kind of
Yep.
dialogue
Yep.
performance conversations, right? I joked that I need one for my kids, my teens, right? Talking to my my adult
Don't
kids.
we all?
I'd like to model out a couple things before I go test them out on them. They always backfire. But anyway, do you think that's realistic? I mean, can we augment managers enough to make up that gap in leadership skill and training? Is that enough, right? I don't think it is, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that being able to sort of fill that gap?
I don't think it's enough, but I think it's a step in the right direction. The farther you go up the ladder, the better you are at doing it. But when you go from being that frontline worker to being a manager of frontline workers, your inclination is still to be, individual contributor, right?
Yeah,
You're
making the
managing, but
cake.
you're also you're getting your hands dirty. You're in there trying to help them. And so to separate yourself from that and do those other things and try to focus on the development of my people and all like that, that can be a challenge. And I mean, it was a challenge for me. I was always kind of hands on. I wanted to be in there and in the fight and in the mix. I didn't just sit back and crunch numbers. And so I think that's a challenge. But I do think it's a step in the right direction. I think like anything, it's about the deployment and the implementation of it.
Yeah.
Right? You can have all the best tools in the world, but if you don't know how to use them, we saw that all the time. People they'd be on, system XYZ and they moved to system 1, 2, 3, and all they did is got a prettier set of tools, but they aren't leveraging it and the strength and capabilities of it. They're just trying to get through the day and get their job done and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think it's exciting, but also a little scary. Like we said, that human in the loop, it's like, are we going to have this thing telling people the wrong stuff to do? I don't know. My mind just goes to so many places.
It's like coding. It's like, programming. Programming is very binary, right? And when you have constraints and you have rules, it makes it a whole lot easier to implement that. But where you have to implement judgment calls, or you got to kind of stew on something to make the right decision there, I think that's when AI will fall short, because AI can't always take into consideration extenuating circumstances that are happening. It tends to be a little more black and white, but I don't think that human element goes away. Our focus at our company is product, culture, and service. Well, every one of those has a human factor to it, right?
Yep.
AI is not going to create the ultimate software culture that we had then, which is what I'm trying to do here, is build a similar company and culture. It's not going to do that. It can assist in that, but it's not going to be able to really do that. It can help with service. It could take the frontline support calls, maybe even second line support calls. It could probably handle a lot of that because that's pretty defined stuff. But when you go to level 3 support, usually when you're getting development involved, that's a whole nother story because now you really got to think through the implications of this thing that a customer wants or needs, and what is the impact, what's the downstream effect on the
Yeah.
system and code. And so,
Yeah, yeah. You bring up a great point. Like I feel like, some of the risk here is like AI is not going to solve culture and leadership, and you're still going to have to own those things and make them human, make them real. And that's, yeah, I hope people aren't kind of like outsourcing that, if you will, to hey, what's my culture and what should I do? You know what I mean? Like I think
right.
it's great to ideate and it's great to do, use data for those things. But I think there's just there's some things we're not going to be able to ram into AI and it fix or do, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
there's a human
yeah,
factor to it, right? You've used up all your sick day or your PTO or whatever, and a family member passes away.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
am I going to tell AI, nope, sorry, you've used it all up, you can't go, or am
The
I going to use a
policy
human?
says, yeah,
Right, the
yeah,
policy says this. No, you do whatever you got to do. We'll cover for you. You take care of it. And
yeah,
right, that's what builds raving fans and raving loyalty and your employees, and is just doing the right thing. And the right
yeah.
thing is not always black and white,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed. I totally agree with that. One of the things, Jim, that we featured here on the show this year was kind of this, and Deloitte had some good research on it. I think at the beginning of last year was just the rise of the COE around WFM, and that
Mhm.
more enterprises are leaning into that as an outlet of expertise and excellence. And we've even had Monica Miller, Julie,
Yeah.
who's a friend of the show, came on with a tremendous, amazing story from Compass. She's got like a 500,000 person payroll, just doing some tremendous work on the workforce management side. But what are your thoughts on that from an enterprise perspective around the kind of COE that's developing around this?
Well, I think it's probably long overdue, and I
Yeah.
think it's just an indication of what has been commoditized for so long in favor of the other flashier stuff. People are realizing, well, wait a minute, that actually really matters, and that's foundational to everything else we do within the organization. So if we can figure that out, which by the way, I always said one of the reasons that I loved HCM is that it's one of the few systems in the organization that every employee in the organization touches.
Yes.
It's never going to go away, right? It's always going to be there. That you're always going to need something like that. WFM, even more so, right? That workforce management, that literally touches every employee in the organization. And it's in a lot of instances, it's the most interactive part of the system for every employee in the organization.
Yeah.
So I think recognizing that and the respecting that and realizing the importance of that is foundational to everything else, right? And one of the reasons we came up with the name Traction is because we feel like that's where you start getting traction in
Yeah.
your organization to move forward, to get to that next level.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, for selfish reasons, we're all for it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but again, it's bringing respect instead of this redheaded stepchild that, well, you got to have it because it's just collecting time.
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just collecting time until you get your first penalty or fine or something, then
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Or the shift doesn't go down because we don't have enough people to here to do it.
yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah,
like payrolls, just cutting checks, right? I mean,
yeah,
no, I think workforce management is very much the fabric of the front line. Your operations, excuse me, not even the front
yeah,
line, the operations, right? Anytime I worked on, I mean, Julie, you've worked on a million deals in big companies, right? It's just a massive swath of operations people in there deciding about, not just the WFM, but maybe some of the other stuff that's going on because they're the ones who have to live with it. They're the ones that
and
have to
for
actually make
frontline employees,
yeah,
that is their experience with the company. That is
exactly.
their culture with the company
Yep.
is WFM. How easy is it for me to manage my life, my schedule around in that system to be able to pick up shifts and
Yep.
offer a shift bid out uh, or no, and look, am I going to get into overtime? Am I going to get into trouble? And what's my pay like? Early wage access.
Yeah.
Early wage access, with Dayforce, they had the real time continuous pay calculation, so it makes it easier for Dayforce Wallet. But with all the others, earn in and daily pay and keeper and all those, they all rely on time data because there's an algorithm. They have to go back and look at your average time data and stuff because what you worked last week doesn't guarantee you that many hours you'll work the next week, right? So they have to look at that, be able to calculate out what amount or percentage of what we're estimating you're going to earn over the next period or something. And then we're going to give you early access to a portion of that and be able to track that. Well, that's all reliant on accurate time data.
Yeah.
And then you take into consideration unions and collective bargaining agreements and things like that.
It's
It gets
messy. It's
yeah,
messy.
it gets messy and it's really
Yeah.
complicated.
You're right. If it can work, and hey, all the outcomes are fantastic that we've talked about, but not only that, the data that's there, huge opportunity with that data to get paired with payrolls data and other data, right? There's just so much going on in that part that I think is
Yeah.
super awesome. But look,
Yeah.
Jim, I want to kind of it's funny. I want to actually add this anecdote, Julie. You might appreciate this.
Uh-oh.
So my kids obviously are all, they're working or whatever. They're coming home with their HR questions, right? And their apps. And I'm getting to see like, whatever, ADP and Paylocity and all these other things. And it's so funny because my kids start asking me HR questions. It's like, I'm like, are we bonding right now? You know what I mean? I'm like, oh,
I'll take it. Right?
yeah. Or, you want to talk HR? Like,
Open enrollment time was the very first, the very first, and they'll sit down and spend a couple hours to figure out what the heck they're doing, right?
So I got to tell you, my little daughter, she's 17 now. She has 2 jobs, right? She's a working gal, right? She works kind of the school. She gets out of school, she goes and works in the office with my wife at her transportation company, and she does a lot of different things. And then she goes in the evenings and she works some nights, just occasionally. She works at the local coffee shop. And Julie, I love this, man. She came home with her first paycheck and she was just like, Dad, do you see how much she was like completely upset about the net pay, gross pay. And I'm like, the realities.
That's the first thing I did with all of my kids. First paycheck. And, what do you think you got for this?
She was
what do you think you
protesting.
got for that?
She was not having it. She was like, who is getting this money? I'm like, well, sit down.
That's a great question.
Let's talk about this. Because she was like, is this going to happen all the time? And I'm like, yeah, for
the
life.
rest of your life.
Here's a question, though. As she starts out, is she still punching clocks and using time clock hardware? Because we've had geofencing, we've had all these other tools and things, but I feel like it's not quite enough to cut the core for a lot of employers.
Yeah, she's
from
on
the
app,
hardware.
man.
So maybe AI could be like nudgy and we could get like, I think you're at work, did you, can you confirm or what can we do?
Just imagine, if you would, there's a company that does geofencing where when you leave your house, you can clock into travel time and it does route-based time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then when you get to your first stop, it says, oh, you're at your first stop. I'm going to clock you out of travel time, clock you into this scheduled appointment here. And then when you leave that building, it says, oh, you're leaving. Do you want to clock out of that and clock into travel time or lunchtime, break time? And it tracks you to your next one, right?
Yeah.
And it does it for you.
Yeah.
You just confirm what it's assuming for you based off of the geofencing.
Well, Jim, back to the very first thing you told us about, about assistive intelligence. Why is it so easy for operations managers to say, I don't know, can I 100% rely on, like all of those different punch points and that data? And yet they'll let it, draft their strategy for 2026, Like there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah. Well, we were talking to a prospect the other day and they said, the geofencing is useless. It goes to the clearest cell tower, which is a mile away. I'm like, well, that's not geofencing. That's ours is within 3 feet. So
WFM is really ripe for that frictionless experience, I think, with IoT and all that. And we saw a lot of that kind of come up in COVID, but now, like, why not? I think with all the time leakage challenges and all the compliance challenges, I think you got to start thinking about these things as part of your stack.
But the technology, to Julie's point,
Yeah.
when you only have a handful of vendors in the space doing it, there's not a lot of compulsion to really invest in innovation and burning the ships and forklift upgrades in your tech stack and all, because it works, right? We just take 50-year-old technology, we slap 20-year-old lipstick on it, it looks better, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's not until, as we all know, competition is, what raises all boats, right? Competition comes in and like, whoa, they did that. We got to make sure we're doing it. And it's a healthy thing. But when, you can dominate the market with a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 vendors that doesn't instill a lot of innovation and risk taking in the
Yeah.
company. So
Yeah, agreed. So Jim, just to kind of round this out, man, I could go on and on. I love talking to you. I always do, man. I appreciate you. Just thinking about like just HR tech in general, like, man, who are the vendors that are going to win? I mean, are we all, I mean, they're not all going to be standing,
yeah,
tomorrow and 10
sure.
years from now, but like, who's going to win, man? Who do you think is going to be still left standing? The types of vendors,
From
characteristics,
the
I mean.
very first
Yeah.
HR tech was my jam because I would go there and I was in meetings from 7:30 in the morning until
Oh, yeah.
7:30 at night because we were the system of record at Ultimate. We were the system of record at Dayforce. So everybody that had a niche solution or product
Yeah.
wanted to partner with us because we were the system of record. And so to be able to see all of the technologies that are bubbling up and it's probably easier now to create stuff like that are niche and bespoke solutions than ever. But we'd go, all right, we should try to acquire that. Hey, let's try to grab that. Let's partner with that one. With all that, even like this past September, walking through, there's a few new vendors with big booths, but they focus on one or two things. But if you look at the playing field in the enterprise space, it's still the same vendors, right? You look at the mid-market, it's still the same vendors. It's the Paycor, Paycom, Paylocity, Paychex,
Yep.
Ultimate, ADP, right? In the enterprise, it's Workday, SAP, SuccessFactors, UKG, and Dayforce. Now, in the SMB space, there's a lot, like with
Oh,
Rippling and
yeah.
Gusto and all these. And by the way, I'm actually using Gusto now. That thing is unbelievable.
Yeah. You
It's
like it?
it's a yeah, it's I hired Mabel Cabrera, who was number 2 in HR at Ultimate. So she handles my HR payroll and benefits and stuff. And even she said, this thing is great. It's like so easy and straightforward. Hopefully when we hit 100 million in revenue, we'll maybe be on something else, but we'll cross
Yeah.
that bridge when we get to it. But I don't see a new big vendor. Maybe the closest to that is like Darwin Box, but they're still trying to figure out US payroll and how, to build
Yeah.
that.
Brands aside, like, what do you think is like the characteristics of those that are going to still be sort of relevant, if you will?
You can't just be another, payroll solution. There's
Yeah.
got to be some compelling reason where you've innovated payroll, you've come at it from a different way that makes it, easier, more intuitive, automates a lot of what you're doing, provides guidance, compliance, and
Yeah.
those sort of things. And that's really hard to do when you have the big players that we have. And then, when you look at in the mid-market, some of like the pays, they've crafted their systems to rely on their services as much as their tech. And I
Yes.
think that's one of the things that's keeping them from moving up market is when you go up market, they don't need your services as much. They want the software to do it. And we saw what happened with Paycom with Betty. It kind of stole some of their services
It
money
did.
and their stock took a hit,
Yeah.
right?
It cannibalized some of that
Yeah.
margin.
And it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
probably the
Yeah.
right thing to do to
Yep.
put more into the tech. But when you go up market, they want the software to do what it needs to do. Not, I
Yeah.
don't want to rely on your services. So that kind of keeps them there. But it's one of those things like we don't know what we don't know. Somebody is going to come up with something
Yeah.
new that is and they'll probably get gobbled up.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're smart, they won't, but
I think
yeah.
it's going to be largely those that can enable value at scale. And to your point, tech
Yeah.
and services create a platform-based solution that keeps people sticky, keeps people coming
Yeah.
back for more. And I think the like you said, these down market players like the Paychexes and others, ADPs, they've put together some really a one-stop shop. You could kind of get everything,
Yeah.
and they could grow with you and all of that. I think that's really really essential there too, right? For that
Just
longevity.
even
So
having the menu, right? I mean,
yeah,
now that there's so much that needs to be automated and then there are services, having a broad menu of options so that employers can, choose and buy what they want from you versus going to multiple places is becoming a distinguishing feature, really.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
What I was preaching for a long time is I studied Salesforce.com and what they did, and they did a skunkworks project. 2 guys went away in a room and they built force.com, right? Because let's be honest, Salesforce was CRM. Not everybody in the company uses CRM. It's a small group of people. But once they built that platform, where other companies could build extensions, enhancements, and improvements on top of it, they absolutely exploded.
Yep.
My thing at Ultimate that I was pushing and at Dayforce was, well, heck, we're the only system in the enterprise that everybody uses. Why don't we build the platform that they did and let people build bespoke solutions and niche products and things like that on top of it, so that we become sticky. They have
Yeah.
to have this thing, so they can't get rid of us because they have to have this thing. And I've heard rumblings of it. Workday's looking at doing it, and I guess Dayforce now is looking at doing it, but I haven't seen anybody actually do it yet.
Yeah. I think Workday's trying to do a lot on the extend and the build and giving people agentic tools and agent tools and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's here, right? I mean, and my thing is everybody's battling for the front door, right? Everybody's talking, we're the front door to the experience. That's going to be interesting to see when we get to a point where it's all conversational and it doesn't matter what the system is. I think who we're going to find out is the front door is who employees prefer to go and talk to, right? Whoever's AI they like to talk to the most, maybe. So yeah.
Yep. The employee experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Jim. Thank you so much, man. This has been so good. How do folks get in touch with you? How can we, where can we get connected?
It's real simple. It's Jim@traction.ai, TRAXXION.ai.
Nice.
Jim@traction.ai. And I'm on LinkedIn, and you can get us off our website. If you see me, I'm 6'9". I'm like a walking lighthouse.
I know.
You are always easy to find in a crowd, Jim.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Oh man, yes, exactly. I'm jealous because you tower over and you can see things I can't. No, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate you sharing with us, and we'll share those links. I'll share your LinkedIn. And congrats on the new company, man. I'm excited for you. I think it's a great time for this.
Thank you so much.
And
I appreciate you all's your friendship over the years and the camaraderie, and that's like I said, it's just like a big family reunion.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, all the best to you. And thank you to everybody for always listening and sticking to stay with us. We'll be back again soon.